It feels like everyone is talking about artificial general intelligence, or AGI, right? But let's be honest, the conversation is a complete mess. It's totally split between these wild visions of utopia on one side and, predictions of absolute doom on the other. So today, we're going to cut through all that noise and look at a new perspective, one that argues this whole goal of generality might just be a total dead end. All right, let's get into it.
So the whole debate, everything, really hinges on this one term, AGI. But here's the problem. It gets thrown around constantly, but almost nobody defines it with any real precision. You've got researchers, CEOs, everyone, with their own private idea of what it means. And that has just made the entire discussion incredibly polarized and, frankly, just confusing.
And I mean, look at this. You can see the problem perfectly right here. It's a full-blown identity crisis. One top goal says AGI is about outperforming humans at valuable work. Okay, another says it's about doing any cognitive task a human can. Then you get the super theoretical goal, learn anything computable. Or my personal favorite, Steve Wozniak's very practical test, can it just make a cup of coffee in a kitchen it's never seen before? And look, these aren't just slight differences. They're fundamentally different, often conflicting North Stars for the entire field of AI.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we're going to tackle the myth of generality itself. Then, we'll see exactly why these AGI definitions fail a pretty basic test. After that, we'll introduce a new North Star, Superhuman Adaptable Intelligence, or SAI. And finally, we'll look at a totally new way to think about measuring progress.
All right, let's kick things off with the biggest assumption that's propping up most of this AGI talk, the idea that human intelligence is general. And because of that, it's the perfect blueprint for AI to copy. But what if that whole idea is just wrong? Let's really stop and think about this for a second. Are we, as humans, truly generalists? We kind of feel like we are, but that's probably just because we can't see our own blind spots. We are fantastic at the things we evolved to be fantastic at, but does that really make us generalists in any true sense of the word?
This right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the issue. It's called Moravec's paradox. The stuff that is incredibly easy for us, just walking across a room, picking up an object, is monumentally difficult for an AI. But the things we find incredibly hard, like playing chess at a grandmaster level or doing complex math, that's child's play for modern computers. This shows we aren't general at all. We're highly, highly specialized for surviving in the physical world.
And this quote is just a perfect example. We think of Magnus Carlsen, the greatest chess player of our era, as a genius. And he is, but only when you compare him to other humans. On an objective, purely computational scale, his ability is just dwarfed by even a halfway decent chess program. We only think he's good because the benchmark we're using is ourselves. It's a classic case of human-centric thinking.
So here's the crucial takeaway from all this. We're not generalists. We are phenomenal adapters, but we can only adapt within the pretty narrow band of tasks that were relevant to our evolution and survival. True generality is something else entirely, and using ourselves as the model for it is just, well, it's fundamentally misguided. Okay, so if the whole premise of human generality is flawed, what does that actually mean for all those AGI definitions that are built on top of it? Well, let's put them through a simple litmus test and see what happens.
You see, for any long-term goal in a field like AI to actually be useful, it's got to meet three pretty basic criteria. First, it has to be theoretically feasible, possible. Second, its own internal logic needs to be consistent. And third, you have to be able to actually measure your progress towards it. It has to be accessible.
And a lot of AGI definitions fail right at that first hurdle, feasibility. There's this concept in machine learning called the no free lunch theorem. It basically proves that no single one-size-fits-all algorithm can be the best for every single type of problem. It's impossible. So when you have finite resources like compute and energy, a system that tries to solve an infinite number of tasks will just end up being terrible at all of them. True universal generality is just computationally intractable. So when you apply this simple test across the board, the definitions just crumble. Any goal to match human cognition? Well, that fails the consistency test because, as we just saw, humans aren't actually general. Goals for universal intelligence? They fail the feasibility test thanks to that no free lunch theorem. And definitions based on doing economically valuable work, they fail the accessibility test because that's a list of benchmarks that's always growing and changing. You can literally never get there.
Okay, so if AGI is such a flawed goal, what's the alternative? This is where the whole conversation shifts. This is where we get a proposed new North Star for AI research, Superhuman Adaptable Intelligence, or SAI. Now, the definition of SAI is incredibly precise and really powerful. It's not about doing everything right out of the box. No, it's about the capability to adapt, to learn, to get better, and to eventually exceed human performance. And this is crucial. It also includes adapting to useful tasks that are completely outside the realm of what humans can even do. This Venn diagram shows the concept perfectly. You've got the domain of human skills, and you've got the AI domain. SAI exists in that shared space where it can learn to do our jobs better than we can. But it also extends way out into its own domain, tackling problems like protein folding or complex systems modeling that are they're beyond our cognitive limits. It's about complementing us, not just copying us. And this whole idea is built on a principle that wins everywhere we look. I mean, in biology, organisms specialize to dominate their environment. In markets, companies specialize to beat their competition. And in machine learning itself, the biggest breakthroughs come from tailoring a model to a very specific problem. The key principle is simple. A specialist will always beat a generalist on its home turf. And that brings us to the final, and maybe the most important shift in thinking. If the goal isn't a generalist AI, then how should we be measuring progress toward building these powerful, adaptable specialists? The old way of thinking, the whole AGI way, is to measure AI against this ever-growing checklist of skills. Can it pass this test? Can it perform that task? But the thing is, the space of possible skills is basically infinite. You're just endlessly pushing a boulder up a hill you can never ever get to the top of. The new metric is so much more powerful. The key is not what an AI can do right now. It's about how quickly and how efficiently it can learn to do something new. The ultimate measure of this kind of intelligence isn't a static list of what it knows, but the dynamic speed of its adaptation. And this quote, I mean, it just says it all, doesn't it? The AI that folds our protein should not be the AI that folds our laundry. We don't need, and we probably don't even want, a single monolithic AI that's just mediocre at everything. What we actually need is an ecosystem of highly specialized superhuman systems, each one tuned to be the absolute best in the world at its specific, valuable task.
So that leaves us with a choice, a fundamental question for the entire field of AI. Should we keep chasing this vague, inconsistent, and maybe even impossible dream of a single generalist intelligence? Or should we focus our efforts on building a future that's powered by a diverse team of superhuman specialists, each one unlocking new capabilities far beyond our own? The path we choose here is going to define everything.